a project called The Record Keeper.
Mm-hmm.
This was brought to you?
That one was a kind of, yeah. It was, someone asked me if I wanted to adapt a book. It was essentially a religious history book. That was a whole interesting process because I didn't want to do it at first because the book it's based on this book that's about where Christianity went after the Bible. You know, the first chapter of the book is in 60 AD, and it chronicles, you know, Martin. It's like making a movie out of European history. Who's your hero? And Luther, your period piece. 60 AD is the first chapter. It's Roman soldiers invading Jerusalem and tearing down a temple. How are you going to shoot that for no money? Like, there's no way. And I was like, you guys are out of your mind. No. Yeah, so I walked away from it, and then they kept coming back and like, you know, how are you going to, please do it. And so I had to start thinking, and this again came from the low budget. They didn't have a lot of money, so I had to think, how can you make a story that transcends thousands of years of history interesting and care about what happens in each era? The only way to do that is to have a character that you follow through these events. That's either someone like a time travel or someone who's immortal. Well, it's a religious history book. How about angels? That makes sense. So like they're immortal, and let's follow their journey of seeing these events. And that's kind of where it all began. So yeah, it came from there and ended up being one of the most creative endeavors of my life. Like it was a really amazing experience making that film.
Where did you film it?
We filmed in Oregon and in Arizona. We shot in a prison, believe it or not. Our set was in a prison because it was up there. I don't know if it's still available, but they built this state-of-the-art prison, and then they ran out of money to run the prison. So it never housed a single inmate. It's paid for by the state in this big empty building. So, and then they couldn't charge to rent it. You only have to pay for utilities and a guard. So the cost of getting this entire facility was so cheap. It was great. And so we built all our sets in there and used that as our home base. And that was, yeah. And then we did some exteriors out in Page, Arizona, out in Horseshoe Bend and Owl Canyon, which is next to Antelope Canyon, the famous canyons in Arizona. It's like one of the photographer's paradise. So we went out there. That was really great. Yeah, that was fun.
And you adapted the book?
I did, sort of, yeah. So I had to hit certain themes and certain events, but we ended up, the story became about angels, and it's essentially the history of man through the eyes of an angel, which that became a really fun thing because angels, even in most cultures, don't have a lot of emotion with them. Like, they don't really know who they are or where they come from, and there's very little written about. There's a lot written, but very little is known who they are, where they come from, how they feel about certain events. They'll come up and show up and maybe protect somebody or make an announcement, but then they leave. We never know what built up to the announcement that they made. Like if you're speaking from a Bible perspective, they might announce someone's being born, but then that's it. They're gone. So the idea of exploring who they were and how they felt about certain Earth events was a lot of fun to try to explore, and a very complicated writing challenge, because when you're trying to write, say, a good angel who can't sin, right? They can't disobey God. Well, that's really hard to write that. How do you write a protagonist that can't disobey an order? That was tough. But they can have opinions about certain things. They can question. They're not cardboard. So, man, it made it fun to experiment in that world. And we ended up starting the story kind of back at the beginning of the creation of the world, as they're marching through all these, for example, they see Noah's Ark, the flood and all that. So angels reacting to God committing genocide. How does a good angel feel about that? That was a fun story to tell. It really made it emotional and impactful. And you're telling stories that people know like Noah's Ark. We all know how it ends. So it's not going to be exciting if you just tell that story. But if you tell it from the angel side, ooh, And it became such a fun writing exercise, and yeah, there's so much more we had to end up cutting the story short because there was so much area we could explore. That's what made it so much fun. Not to mention the fact of who they are, what they wear. That was one of the first questions that was the hardest is, what are they wearing? I was like, I don't know. Because, we mostly see angels in their white robes and their wings, and I didn't want wings. White robes, I wanted them to feel like real beings and entities, so like, what do they wear? I mean, technically, if you follow, say, the Bible, mankind wasn't wearing clothes at the beginning, so do angels wear pants? That seems kind of wrong. Do we naked angels? So what do you? So my first thought to the wardrobe person was, I think that they're military. We'll go with military. And then she goes, okay, well, which military? Are we talking present day, like Marines, or are we talking like Roman soldiers? Are we talking which continent, which nation, which era? Like, oh man, I don't know. So we ended up going with steampunk, which is, if you don't know what steampunk is, it's an aesthetic which is very cool. It's like if the information age had happened in the steam era, like in the Victorian age, but steam-powered technology, steam-powered computers, and things like that. It's a really fun thing. It's top hats and long tails, and it just fits so perfectly into this world because it's otherworldly, but it's sort of grounded, and it's got this fun back and forth. And so we ended up, and then that inspired the entire, like, what the office looks like, because we didn't want to go with the foggy floor and, like heaven we usually see. I wanted an office that looked like they're really there working, and oh man, that was a fun world to explore. So it helped make it all real and grounded and all that.
I was going to bring up the angel character, but he was like the sarcastic angel.
Oh, the fallen angel.
No, John Travolta played an angel.
Oh,
remember?
Michael, yeah.
It's actually
Michael.
really funny. But
Well, and that's an interesting comparison because angel stories, all the angel stories that I've seen are generally like this, like the movie Michael, where it's where heaven is painted as this terrible, boring place where you can't have any fun. So the whole premise of Michael is it's the last hurrah on earth. He comes down and he's having sex, isn't he? And then he's eating a lot of sugar and drinking coffee. He's like doing all these bad things, like because Earth is where it's at, and heaven sucks. I got to go back there. So that's very common. I mean, City of Angels with Nicolas Cage was sort of the same kind of movie where it's angels can't feel wind or water, but humans have it, and so he gives up his angelic whatever to be a human and falls in love with Meg Ryan, who is killed in a car accident. Spoiler alert. And it's just, I wanted to tell a story with a different viewpoint on all of that and really make it about good versus evil and how do we feel about these events and how do they feel? How are they reacting to the first time they see someone get killed? What does that do? How does that, like for example, one of the themes we explore is a fallen angel, a demon, having PTSD over death. Like that's not something I've ever seen before. Like having nightmares about watching someone die for the first time. And them saying, this punishment is awful. Like I don't know what death looks, dealing with that. That was so great to explore all that. Yeah.
Right, because we think of, let's say, Ghost, Patrick Swayze, where he's kind of like caught. He doesn't want to,
in between.
Right, and it's torture for him to kind of not be there, and then Whoopi Goldberg is, there's this comedic thing, but that he's kind of caught between these two worlds, so it's not really hell or heaven for him. He's just sort of like stuck.
Yeah.
A stuck spirit or something.
Yeah, and it's funny, the messaging there. Like it's just this negative, it's like a negative view of the afterlife in a way. You go there and you lose. Because he didn't want to let her go. So I wanted to try to paint a different story about this, very clear what's right and what's wrong and how do humans factor in and what will we do to protect them. And I think there's way more area to explore in that as well, which I'm doing. But yeah.